95%, not damaged, not retreating, gone. In less than 72 hours, one of the most heavily armed naval forces in the Middle East was wiped off the map. Ships that were threatening to cut off 20% of the world's oil supply were either sitting on the ocean floor, burning at the docks, or running thousands of miles across the Indian Ocean, begging foreign ports to let them in. This is the story of how Iran made the single biggest military miscalculation in its modern history, and how the world's energy supply nearly collapsed because of it. If you want coverage like this, no spin, no corporate filter, just the full picture, hit subscribe. Independent reporting only stays alive if you keep it alive. Let's go back to the moment Iran pulled the trigger. The Strait of Hormuz is 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. That is it. 33 kilometers of open water between Iran and Oman. And through that tiny gap, every single day flows approximately 20 million barrels of oil.
Pause. Roughly only if of everything the entire planet burns. Iran had spent decades building a single strategy around that number. We do not need to beat America in a fair fight. We just need to hold that waterway hostage. And for a long time, on paper at least, that strategy made sense. When IRGC Navy Commander Alaza Tangiri stepped in front of cameras and announced that American, Israeli, and European ships would not be permitted passage through the strait, he was not bluffing for show. He was reading from a decades-old playbook. The regime's calculation was precise and cold. Close the strait even for a few days, and oil prices explode past $100 a barrel. Fuel prices spike across Europe and the United States. Inflation bites. Populations get angry. Angry populations pressure governments. Governments fracture. The Western coalition breaks from the inside. Iran was not just trying to fight a war with missiles. It was trying to win through your gas bill. Here is where the plan started falling apart because Iran did not limit its attacks to American or Israeli ships. It hit everyone. 17 commercial tankers attempting routine transit were struck. 6 of them were rendered completely unusable. A civilian vessel flying a Thai flag, the Mayari, carrying nothing connected to the United States or Israel, was hit by explosive-laden drone boats. The crew evacuated, the ship burned, and then Iran hit a Russian LNG carrier. Russia, its closest major ally, the country that had shielded Iran at the United Nations, supplied weapons technology, and publicly described their relationship as a strategic partnership. Iran hit their ship. Whether it was an accident or a catastrophic failure of targeting discipline, it did not matter. The message it sent was devastating. The IRGC's forces in the strait had lost control of their own operation, and the world noticed. Global shipping froze overnight. The number of vessels transiting the strait daily, normally between 70 and 80 massive cargo ships, collapsed to nearly zero. Outside the Persian Gulf, over 1,000 commercial ships dropped anchor and waited. A floating traffic jam of tankers worth billions of dollars, completely motionless, waiting for someone to tell them it was safe to move. Maritime insurance premiums hit levels the industry had never recorded. Every minute the strait stayed closed. Millions of dollars evaporated from global trade. The economic weapon Iran had aimed at the West was now pointing at everyone. Then America answered. Not with a diplomatic note. Not with a UN resolution that Russia and China would have vetoed in 48 hours with the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald. 2 carrier strike groups, each one a floating air base surrounded by destroyers, cruisers, and attack submarines capable of projecting overwhelming force across hundreds of miles in every direction. They had already been in the region, positioned and waiting. The deterrent phase was over. What followed was the most devastating single campaign against Iranian military assets in history. American bombers hit Iranian ports. Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from submarines struck targets aircraft could not reach. Naval infrastructure, fuel depots, maintenance facilities, command nodes, all of it hit with precision. Within days, 95% of Iran's operational naval fleet was destroyed or rendered non-functional. Corvettes, frigates, fast attack craft, mine-laying vessels, logistic ships, decades of investment, and billions of dollars gone. Most of it sitting on the bottom of the Persian Gulf or burning where it docked. But the story does not end at the docks. 3 of Iran's most significant warships were not at home when the strikes began. The Iris Dana, the Iris Levin, and the Iris Bushehr had been participating in a multinational naval exercise in India. They were somewhere in the Indian Ocean heading home when everything back in Iran started burning. They accelerated. They changed course. The US Navy had been tracking them the entire time. The Iris Dana ran south through the Bay of Bengal, past the southern coast of Sri Lanka, pushing hard to get home. It was not fast enough. On March 4, 2026, a US submarine fired a torpedo and sank it. That strike was the first successful American torpedo attack since World War II. More than 70 years between that moment and the last time a US submarine sank an enemy ship in combat. That chapter reopened off the coast of Sri Lanka in the spring of 2026. The Iris Levon claimed a technical malfunction and diverted into the Indian port of Kochi. Its 183 crew members were placed under what diplomats carefully called housing at nearby naval facilities. They were detained. The Iris Busher followed and sought shelter in Colombo, Sri Lanka. Same result. Neither ship made it home. Neither ship escaped. Now, here is the part most coverage gets wrong. None of this. Not a single sunk ship, not a single destroyed port solved the actual problem in the Strait of Hormuz. Because Iran's real weapons were never the warships. They were the things nobody could see. Deep inside the mountains and cliffs lining the Iranian side of the strait, carved into rock over decades, are tunnels and underground facilities housing some of the most dangerous anti-ship weapons on the planet. Missiles like the QIM-2, capable of traveling at Mach 3, 3 times the speed of sound. Shah drone swarms that cost almost nothing to produce and can be launched from hidden facilities buried in cliffsides. Fast attack boats operated by IRGC units who know every sandbar and current in those shallow waters. Destroying 95% of a navy that was largely the supporting cast to the real threat is significant. But it is the opening move in a much longer, much harder war. The Pentagon satellites were already scanning the Iranian coastline kilometer by kilometer, hunting for thermal signatures and electronic emissions that point to underground missile batteries. When analysts identified a target with confidence, bombers struck. Radar stations went dark. Drone facilities collapsed. Underground bunkers built over years were destroyed in seconds. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth confirmed directly that Iran's military capabilities had suffered what he called massive destruction. He was not being diplomatic. But the honest military assessment is this: you cannot destroy what you have not yet found. Iran built redundancy into its underground systems for exactly this scenario. There are almost certainly facilities still functioning that American surveillance has not yet located. The war has not ended. It has moved from open water where American naval power is uncontestable to mountains and underground tunnels where the work is slower, harder, and offers no clean finish line. Meanwhile, the US Navy deployed carrier strike groups at both ends of the Strait of Hormuz. Aegis, cruisers and destroyers formed lead air defense screens. And in one of the most extraordinary announcements of the crisis, US Central Command declared that American warships would personally escort civilian oil tankers through the strait. The United States Navy for the first time was operating openly as a global maritime police force. Not every nation waited for American protection. Pakistan launched Operation Wafadar, deploying its own naval escorts for Pakistani civilian tankers in the Arabian Sea. Careful, notably, not to enter the strait itself. Turkey reported 15 of its ships waiting in the region. One of them, the Rosanna, managed transit after what Ankara described as sensitive diplomatic negotiations. The other 14 stayed put. Chinese-affiliated vessels moved differently from everyone else, broadcasting their identities loudly on identification systems, sending an unmistakable signal to any Iranian operator. We are Chinese. Do not touch us. It worked. What this patchwork revealed was important. The strait was not uniformly closed. It was not uniformly open. It was something in between. A space where your safety depended on your flag, your government's back-channel relationships, and who was watching. Then there were the mines. In addition to its missiles, drones, and fast boats, Iran had prepared sea mines, anchored to the seabed, invisible to radar, triggered by a ship's magnetic signature or acoustic profile. A mine strike does not clear in days or weeks. It clears in months, sometimes years. American planners identified Iran's mine fleet as a priority target early. 16 mine-laying vessels were specifically hunted down and destroyed before completing their missions. That decision may be one of the most consequential of the entire campaign. A mine strait would have kept killing and blocking traffic long after any ceasefire, any diplomacy, any political resolution. Those 16 ships were a slow-motion catastrophe that never fully detonated. So where does this leave us? Iran's conventional navy is finished. The ships are gone, detained, or hiding. The mine threat was stopped. Iranian ports and naval bases are rubble. The IRGC Navy, the force that threatened to hold the world's most critical waterway hostage, is no longer a functioning military institution at sea. But the land-based threat remains. Some underground missile batteries are still operational. Drone production continues at facilities not yet identified. The Houthis in Yemen firing Iranian-designed weapons near the Red Sea are still active. A second choke point crisis running simultaneously. The war has not ended. It has changed shape. And beyond the military picture, the costs to ordinary people are real and still growing. Energy prices spiked. Fertilizer production dependent on natural gas was disrupted. Aviation fuel jumped. Helium supplies critical for medical imaging equipment and semiconductor manufacturing were affected. The Pentagon has submitted an emergency budget request in the hundreds of billions of dollars. That money comes from a country already carrying tens of trillions in national debt. Every dollar spent in the Persian Gulf is a dollar not spent somewhere else. There is also a deeper question that no military campaign can answer. Even if every underground missile in Iran is eventually found and destroyed, even if the strait fully reopens, what happens the day after? Iran's government is still in place. Its ideology is still in place. Its relationships with the Houthis and other armed groups are still in place. Destroying a military force is not the same as resolving the conflict that built it. The precedent set in these weeks will shape calculations in this region for decades. An American submarine sinking an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean. The systematic destruction of an entire national navy. Those facts are now permanent features of the strategic landscape. Every government, every military, every commander with ambitions in those waters now has to calculate against them. The message sent off the coast of Sri Lanka was not aimed only at Iran. It was aimed at anyone, anywhere, running the numbers on whether they could challenge American control of the world's oceans. The answer came back clear. No. This channel runs on your support. No advertisers, no corporate backing. If this coverage mattered to you, drop a comment below. It helps more than you know. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. The question we want to leave you with is this. Can sustained American air and intelligence operations actually eliminate Iran's underground asymmetric threat? Or are those systems too deeply buried, too redundant, and too well hidden to ever be fully destroyed? And is there a political path that ends this? Or are we watching the start of a permanent new confrontation that defines the Persian Gulf for a generation? Tell us what you think below. This story is not over. Every development matters, and you need to be here when the next one breaks.